The air in courtroom 4B hung thick with the scent of old wood polish and stale coffee. Aisha Bennett pressed her thumb against the manila folder in her lap, feeling the sharp edge bite into her skin. It grounded her. Outside, September rain drummed against the windows, but inside, the only sound was the bailiff's shoes squeaking against linoleum as he paced near the door. She was 29 years old, and this was the third time she'd been pulled over in 6 months. The third time. Same neighborhood, same stretch of road between her apartment and her mother's house. But this time was different. This time, Officer Brennan had planted evidence, a small baggie of pills in her glove compartment that she'd never seen before in her life. And this time, she couldn't afford to stay silent. Aisha glanced at her mother in the gallery. Lorraine Bennett sat in the second row, her church hat slightly tilted, hands folded tight enough to crack knuckles. Next to her, Aisha's younger brother Marcus shifted uncomfortably, his jaw clenched. They'd taken the day off work to be here. Her mother worked double shifts at the hospital. Marcus drove delivery trucks 12 hours a day. Their presence was a sacrifice she felt in her bones. All rise for the Honorable Judge Harold Whitman. The courtroom stood as one. Judge Whitman entered, a white man in his mid-60s with silver hair swept back, wire-rimmed glasses perched on a narrow nose, and the kind of face that had never known a traffic stop at midnight. His black robe swished as he settled into his chair, surveying the room with the detached expression of someone reviewing a grocery list. "Be seated," he said, waving one hand dismissively. Aisha sat. Her throat felt dry. She'd dressed carefully that morning. Navy blazer, cream blouse, pearl earrings her grandmother had left her. Respectability armor, her friend Keisha called it. The costume you wore when you needed white people to see you as human. Case number 247789, the clerk announced. The State versus Aisha Marie Bennett. Possession with intent to distribute. Intent to distribute. The words landed like stones. She was a community organizer, a translator for refugee families, a woman who'd spent the last 5 years helping immigrants navigate the legal system. And now she stood accused of drug trafficking because a cop didn't like the way she'd questioned him about probable cause. "Ms. Bennett," Judge Whitman said, not looking up from his papers, "I see you're representing yourself. That's ambitious." The word dripped with condescension. "Do you understand the charges against you?" Aisha stood. "Yes, Your Honor. I understand them completely, and I intend to prove they're false." The judge's eyebrows rose slightly. He set down his pen. "False? I see. Well, we'll determine that, won't we? Why don't you begin by telling the court why you believe you're qualified to represent yourself in a criminal matter?" Here it was, the moment she'd been preparing for. "Your Honor, I have a bachelor's degree in international relations from Howard University and a master's in linguistics from Georgetown University. I've worked for 3 years with the Refugee Legal Aid Society, helping clients navigate immigration proceedings. I speak 7 languages fluently: English, Spanish, French, Arabic, Mandarin, Portuguese, and Haitian Creole, which has allowed me to work directly with diverse communities and understand how language shapes legal interpretation." She paused, watching his face. Something flickered there. Surprise, maybe, or irritation that she'd come prepared. "I mention this not to impress the court," she continued, her voice steady, "but because my background is directly relevant to this case. Officer Brennan's report contains multiple inconsistencies, including mistranslations of my statements and a fundamental misunderstanding of the community he was policing that night." Judge Whitman leaned back, lacing his fingers across his stomach. A thin smile played at his lips. 7 languages. My. That's quite a resume, Ms. Bennett. He glanced at the prosecutor, then back at her. But this is an American courtroom. We speak English here. Your linguistic talents, while I'm sure they're very impressive at cocktail parties, aren't really relevant to whether or not you had illegal substances in your vehicle. Aisha's pulse quickened. She'd expected dismissiveness, but the casual racism in his tone, the way he reduced years of study and work to cocktail party tricks, made her stomach tighten. Behind her, she heard her mother's sharp intake of,
"Your Honor," Aisha said carefully, "I'm not here to perform. I'm here because Officer Brennan's report claims I was evasive and spoke in a foreign language to avoid answering questions. The foreign language was Creole. I was on the phone with a client from Haiti when he pulled me over, a client whose asylum hearing is next week. That phone call is documented and time-stamped. It's not evasion, it's my job." The judge waved his hand. "Be that as it may, we're here to discuss facts and law, not your impressive credentials." He emphasized the word impressive, the way someone might say alleged or so-called. "Let's not waste the court's time with theatrics about how many languages you speak. It's unnecessary." Unnecessary. The word hung in the air like a slap. Aisha felt the familiar weight settling over her, the exhaustion of being twice as qualified and half as believed. She thought of her grandmother, who'd cleaned houses to put her mother through nursing school. Her grandmother who'd whispered in her ear before she died, "Baby, you gotta be excellent, and even then, they'll find a way to make you small." But she'd learned something her grandmother never had the chance to. Excellence wasn't enough. You had to make them see their own ignorance reflected back at them. "Your Honor," she said quietly, "may I approach the bench?" Judge Whitman frowned. "For what purpose?" "I have evidence that I believe will clarify the relevance of my background to this case, evidence that the prosecution has failed to properly examine." The judge sighed, as if she were a child asking to stay up past bedtime. "Very well. Approach." Aisha walked forward, her heels clicking against the floor. She handed him a thick folder. "Inside, you'll find the police report in its original form, along with audio recordings from my phone that night. You'll also find documentation that Officer Brennan has made similar arrests in my neighborhood over the past 18 months. 7 arrests, all black or brown residents. All charges eventually dropped or dismissed." Judge Whitman opened the folder, his expression shifting from boredom to something sharper. He leafed through several pages, then looked up at her. "And your linguistic abilities factor into this how exactly?" Aisha met his gaze. "Because 3 of those 7 arrests involved immigrants who spoke limited English. Officer Brennan's reports consistently claim they were uncooperative or evasive. But the body camera footage, when properly translated, shows they were simply trying to understand what was happening. Language, Your Honor, isn't just about communication. It's about power. And when it's weaponized, it becomes a tool of oppression." The courtroom had gone completely silent. Even the rain seemed to pause. Judge Whitman stared at her, his face unreadable. "We'll take a 15-minute recess," he said finally, his voice tight. "Miss Bennett, be prepared to present your evidence when we reconvene." As the bailiff called the recess, Aisha walked back to her seat. Her hands were steady, but her heart hammered against her ribs. Her mother reached forward and squeezed her shoulder. "You got him rattled," Marcus whispered. Aisha didn't respond. She knew this was just the beginning. The real fight, the stunning moment that would change everything, was still to come. But she'd done something important. She'd made Judge Whitman realize this wasn't going to be the easy dismissal he had expected. And in this courtroom, that was a revolution in itself. The 15-minute recess felt like 15 hours. Aisha stood in the courthouse hallway, her back against the cool marble wall, eyes closed. Her mother and Marcus flanked her like sentries. "You holding up, baby?" Lorraine asked, her hand warm on her arm. "I'm good, Mama." Aisha opened her eyes. Through the tall windows, she could see the rain had stopped. Weak sunlight filtered through dissipating clouds. "I just need to finish this." Marcus cracked his knuckles. "That judge looked shook when you handed him that folder." "Shook isn't enough. I need him stunned." When the bailiff called them back, the courtroom felt different. The gallery had filled. Word must have spread during recess. Aisha recognized faces from her neighborhood, people from the Refugee Legal Aid Society, even Mrs. Chen from the corner store. They'd come to witness. Judge Whitman returned, his expression unreadable. He settled into his chair and spent a long moment reviewing the documents Aisha had given him. Finally, he looked up.
"Miss Bennett," he said, his voice more measured now, stripped of its earlier condescension. "You've presented some interesting evidence. The prosecution will need time to review Officer Brennan's pattern of arrests. However, we still need to address the physical evidence, the substance found in your vehicle." The prosecutor, a thin man named Carlson with a receding hairline and an expensive suit, stood quickly. "Your Honor, the evidence is clear. Chemical analysis confirmed the pills were oxycodone. Miss Bennett's character references, while admirable, don't negate the physical facts." Aisha rose. Her hands were steady. This was it, the moment she'd been building toward. "Your Honor, may I present additional evidence?" Judge Whitman gestured impatiently. "Proceed." Aisha pulled out her phone, connected it to the courtroom's display system. She'd filed the technical request 2 days ago, and pulled up a video file. "This is body camera footage from Officer Brennan's traffic stop. The prosecution provided an edited version. This is the complete, unedited recording." She pressed play. The screen showed Officer Brennan approaching her car from his dashboard perspective. Audio crackled to life. "License and registration," Brennan's voice commanded. "Of course, officer," Aisha's voice, calm and cooperative. "May I ask why I was pulled over?" "Broken tail light." "My tail light isn't broken. I had my car serviced 3 days ago." A pause. "I'd like to document this stop. I'm recording on my phone." The temperature in Brennan's voice dropped 20 degrees. "Step out of the vehicle, ma'am." Aisha paused the video. "Notice, Your Honor, that up to this point I've been completely cooperative. Now, watch what happens next." She resumed playback. On screen, Aisha exited her car. Brennan ordered her to the sidewalk. Then his partner, a younger officer whose name tag read Martinez, approached the passenger side. The body camera angle shifted as Brennan opened Aisha's glove compartment. His hands moved quickly, but not quickly enough. The video caught it. A small baggie palmed from his pocket slipped beneath her registration papers, then discovered seconds later. The courtroom erupted. Gasps, shouts, someone crying out, "Oh my God!" Judge Whitman's gavel cracked like thunder. "Order! I will have order!" But Aisha wasn't done. She raised her voice over the chaos. "Your Honor, there's more! The audio!" She advanced the video to the moment Brennan had her in handcuffs. His body camera had recorded everything, including his conversation with Officer Martinez. "Another one from this neighborhood?" Martinez asked in Spanish, clearly not realizing the body camera's audio picked up everything. "Yeah," Brennan replied in heavily accented Spanish. "These people think they're smart. Let's see how smart she is with a record." "Estas personas," these people. Aisha stopped the video and switched to a different file, an audio waveform analysis. "Your Honor, I speak Spanish fluently, but more importantly, I had this conversation professionally translated and verified by 3 certified court translators." She distributed copies to the judge and prosecutor. "Officer Brennan's exact words translate to, 'These people think they're smart.' In context, given the neighborhood's demographics and his pattern of arrests, the phrase carries clear racial implications. Judge Whitman's face had gone pale, then red. He stared at the documents in front of him like they might bite. Aisha continued, her voice growing stronger. This is why language matters, Your Honor. This is why my unnecessary multilingual abilities are directly relevant to this case. Officer Brennan assumed no one would understand his conversation with Officer Martinez. He assumed I was just another target in a neighborhood he'd been systematically profiling. He was wrong. The prosecutor stood, stammering, Your Honor, we had no knowledge of this. Sit down, Mr. Carlson, Judge Whitman said quietly. His voice carried the weight of a man watching his courtroom and possibly his career implode in real time. Aisha pulled out another document. I've also subpoenaed Officer Brennan's personal phone records from the night of my arrest. 10 minutes after he booked me, he sent a text message to an unknown number. The message read, and I quote, "Handled another uppity one from Fletcher Street. She won't be causing problems anymore." She let that sink in. Uppity, she repeated, a word with deep historical roots in American racism, a word used to describe black people who didn't know their place. Judge Whitman removed his glasses and rubbed his eyes. When he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. Miss Bennett, why didn't you present this evidence to the prosecution's office before trial?
I did, Your Honor. Aisha's voice was ice. 3 times. Each time, I was told the evidence was inconclusive or irrelevant. The 4th time, I was told that if I continued to harass the prosecutor's office, I'd face additional charges for obstruction. She turned to face the gallery, then back to the judge. So I learned the system from the inside. I studied every rule, every procedure, every loophole. Because in this country, being excellent isn't enough when you're black. You have to be perfect. And even then, you have to prove it 3 times over. The courtroom was absolutely silent. Aisha's mother was crying quietly. Marcus had his arm around her. Judge Whitman set down his gavel carefully, as if it were made of glass. Mr. Carlson, does the state wish to continue with this prosecution? Carlson stood slowly. His face was ashen. No, Your Honor. The state moves to dismiss all charges against Ms. Bennett and requests an immediate investigation into Officer Brennan's conduct. Motion granted. Judge Whitman looked at Aisha. What she saw in his face wasn't just embarrassment. It was recognition. The uncomfortable realization that he'd been complicit in a system he'd never questioned. Ms. Bennett, this court owes you an apology. I owe you an apology. Your abilities aren't unnecessary, they're extraordinary. And they've exposed a rot in our justice system that should never have existed. He paused, then added, I'm referring this case to the State Bar Ethics Committee and recommending Officer Brennan's immediate suspension. I'm also ordering a review of every case he's been involved with over the past 3 years. Aisha nodded slowly. Thank you, Your Honor. But with respect, an apology isn't enough. The 7 other people Officer Brennan arrested deserve justice too. The hundreds of people who've been dismissed, mocked, and underestimated in this courthouse deserve better. She gathered her papers, her hands finally trembling with the adrenaline she'd been holding back. Real change isn't one judge admitting he was wrong. Real change is a system that never allows this to happen again. As she turned to leave, the gallery rose. Not for the judge, but for her. Applause started slowly, then built into something thunderous. Mrs. Chen was on her feet. Her co-workers were crying. Marcus was grinning through tears. Outside, the sun had broken through completely. News vans were already pulling up. Someone had live-streamed the hearing. Aisha's phone buzzed with messages, interview requests, calls from civil rights organizations. But she ignored them all. She walked to her mother and Marcus, and they held each other in the courthouse plaza, 3 generations of black excellence refusing to be diminished. You did it, baby. Your grandmother would be so proud.
Aisha closed her eyes, feeling the sun on her face. She'd won. But more than that, she'd exposed a truth that couldn't be buried again. Language wasn't just communication. It was power. It was evidence. It was revolution. And she'd just proven that excellence, when wielded with purpose, could shatter even the most entrenched systems of oppression. The real work, the investigations, the policy changes, the fight for the other 7 was just beginning. But today, in this moment, she'd done something profound. She'd made them see her.